Hey there, John Ray with Musing Wizard. I just watched the Graham Hancock Flint Dibble debate on Joe Rogan, and I had an interesting thought that came to mind around simulation theory that I wanted to unpack. One of the things that I've been playing around with is this idea of truth, and is there one truth, or do we all have our own personal truth? If reality actually is a simulation, do we each have this kind of personal bubble universe that has some kind of Venn diagram effect with those that we're interacting with? And is reality actually a game of consensus where if we can convince 51% of the population or those who are observing reality of some fact, does that then morph the simulation into representing that fact? And so a couple of things. I've been watching debate videos because as a recovering people pleaser, it's uncomfortable sometimes for me to hear people that are in active opposition. I tense up and I feel just uncomfortable is the word when I hear that. And as part of me growing my nervous system and growing the pipes of my nervous system, I've been doing my best to stay fully tuned in to debates, hearing both sides of things so that I am not biased towards any polarity. And as a wizard or a conscious creator or someone who is interested in having a tangible effect on reality or the simulation, I feel that a place of balance where I can look at opposing viewpoints without having an emotional trigger around those things is likely the best place for that magic to take place. But let's put that to the side for the second and get back into how consensus molds and solidifies reality around us. And so if reality is a simulation and it's just information, ones and zeros that are being interpreted by us, and if this information lives in some kind of a quantum field, we have heard from various quantum theorists that the observer effect is that reality does not render itself until observed. And so if some data has not been observed by all of the people that are currently observers in the game, observers of the simulation, then that data kind of lives in a superposition state where it's a Schrodinger box type thing. The cat is either alive or dead, but we don't know until we actually look at it. And as I was watching the Graham Hancock Flint Dibble debate, I was thinking about how part of the game of the consciousness simulation that we live in might be to create consensus around certain ideas. So we know that in the past, people thought that the earth was flat. Now there's a resurgence of that, and there's a growing population who believe that the earth is flat again. You have obviously traditional science that is working from the framework of a globe, and traditional archaeologists that are working from the framework of this is what we know, and not necessarily building out the funding to explore things that we don't know. So why is this important? What's interesting about Graham Hancock to me is that he is testing ideas that are not normally ideas that are funded, and he is shifting consciousness. He is moving hearts and minds in a direction towards consensus in something that goes against the normal scientific holding of the time. And I'm wondering if it is one of those things where if you dig enough for the thing that you're looking for, that eventually you find enough evidence to prove it to yourself, and that gives you the conviction required to then continue to seek out evidence until there's enough evidence or you are persuasive enough to convince 51% of the observers of reality that your idea actually is the idea. And this is where a paradigm shift happens in science. So I'm not a scientist. I don't know enough about how all of these things come together, but I am interested in the idea of simulation theory, and I do know that in a quote-unquote post-truth world, oftentimes we can find the evidence that will, at a minimum, prove something that we want to believe. And if we take that a step further and we believe that we have some kind of tangible impact on the way that reality renders itself, I'm wondering if the game of reality isn't just to create consensus, to win hearts and minds to your ideas, and if that's part of the fun of the video game. And if you have enough conviction, if you allow yourself to be just visionary enough to be to be somewhat perceived as crazy, will you ultimately unlock evidence that newly renders itself, hidden under the ocean, hidden somewhere, hidden in plain sight? The Mandela effect comes to mind, where maybe past evidence changes to something else that allows us to see things from a different perspective, or the thank God they invented such and such phenomena happens, where all of a sudden old evidence is thrown out because of a new discovery. Is this the result of people who are actually rendering reality in such a way where new histories are formed and new linear paths and timelines towards future discoveries line up because someone had deep conviction and because they were able to get that 51% consensus from reality? We know that Daryl Anka, Bashar, the entity that Daryl Anka channels, talks about how, in the world that supposedly he comes from, this kind of future dimensional space, that they wake up and the entire civilization is in telepathic sync, and they decide, is the sky going to be purple today? Is it going to be green? And then whatever consensus they come to, that's what color the sky renders as. And I wonder if we are not, in this post-truth world, starting to have the early realization that, this is a quantum reality. It is not something solid. It is something that is a potential superset that is going to render itself based on consensus. And rather than us pushing against other ideas, which then lock those ideas into place because we're giving them attention, is not the better way for us to bring about the things that we desire and to have our personal reality overlap into consensus of other people's personal reality, to, instead of fighting against something, instead continue to champion an idea and continue to search for it with conviction and a knowingness that reality will render the evidence required for that macro collapsing of the wave in such a way that reality then becomes the thing that we saw in our mind. But too often, we take the telepathic projections of others, we take the evidence that others have, and we don't have the level of conviction required to actually re-render reality, because we have to be willing to be seen as crazy first and push beyond the telepathic projections of what is in order to start to anchor in a rendering of reality that matches something different. So not sure if that's exactly how things work, but I have noticed that as I watch people that are in debate and opposition, and I kind of feel through that and find a balance point and am able to acknowledge both sides, it occurs to me that if I were seeking out some information, because my attention is wholly focused on that, and I think this is what Graham Hancock is trying to convey, is that too much of the cruise ship of science right now is focused in the direction of where they can get grants, because grants go to where evidence already exists. But as a visionary, Graham wants to look in a different direction. So he's in a speedboat, but that speedboat does not have the amount of fuel for long distance travel, for carrying a bunch of people with it. And what he's trying to do with his documentaries is to raise consciousness attention on his ideas, which then slowly start to move consensus in reality to a point where more and more evidence can then render itself. And then ultimately, he may be proven correct if he's able to continue with the same level of conviction and convince the hearts and minds of others to carry on his work. And my guess is that if we wanted to, we could align with his ideas and essentially invent or render the evidence that would prove them right. Or we could decide that we want to be in alignment with Flint Dibble and start looking for evidence to back up his ideas. And that's part of the choose your own adventure reality that we live in. Both people can be correct, and whichever one we give our attention to for the longest period of time will determine the type of information that reality renders in our direction, which ultimately gives us conviction about what we want to see in the future, and the things that we can be truly visionary about, have that holographic image of in our mind, and see that wholly, feel it, and know that the evidence is there. Then perhaps those realities then render, and we're able to walk around in a world that is different from what people thought it was. Anyhow, just a thought experiment. Let me know what you think in the comments. Bye.